The Populvuh, the First Book, by Lewis Spence. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Populvuh, the First Book. Over a universe wrapped in the gloom of a dense and primeval night passed the god Huracan, the mighty wind. He called out, "Earth!" and the solid land appeared. The chief gods took counsel. They were Huracan, Gugamats, the serpent covered with green feathers, and Supayakuk and Zumucain, the mother and father gods. As the result of their deliberations, animals were created, but as yet man was not. To supply the deficiency, the divine beings resolved to create mannequins carved out of wood. But these soon incurred the displeasure of the gods, who, irritated by their lack of reverence, resolved to destroy them. Then, by the will of Huracan, the heart of heaven, the waters were swollen, and a great flood came upon the mannequins of wood. They were drowned, and a thick rosin fell from heaven. The bird Sikatkavach tore out their eyes. The bird Camelots cut off their heads. The bird Kotzbalam devoured their flesh. The bird Tecumbalam broke their bones and sinews and ground them into powder. Because they had not thought on Huracan, therefore the face of the earth grew dark, and a pouring rain commenced, raining by day and by night. Then all sorts of beings, great and small, gathered together to abuse the men to their faces. The very household utensils and animals jeered at them, their millstones, their plates, their cups, their dogs, their hens. Said the dogs and hens, "Very badly have you treated us, and you have bitten us. Now we bite you in turn." Said the millstones, metates, "Very much were we tormented by you, and daily, night and day it was squeak, screech, screech for your sake. Now you shall feel our strength, and we will grind your flesh and make meal of your bodies." And the dogs upbraided the mannequins because they had not been fed, and tore the unhappy images with their teeth. And the cups and dishes said, "Pain and misery you gave us, smoking our tops and sides, cooking us over the fire, burning and hurting us as if we had no feeling. Now it is your turn, and you shall burn." Then ran the mannequins hither and thither in despair. They climbed to the roofs of the houses, but the houses crumbled under their feet. They tried to mount to the tops of the trees, but the trees hurled them from them. They sought refuge in the caverns, but the caverns closed before them. Thus was accomplished the ruin of this race, destined to be overthrown. And it is said that their posterity are the little monkeys who live in the woods. The myth of Populvuh. After this catastrophe, ere yet the earth was quite recovered from the wrath of the gods, there existed a man full of pride, whose name was Populvuh. The name signifies 7 times the color of fire, or very brilliant, and was justified by the fact that its owner's eyes were of silver, his teeth of emerald, and other parts of his anatomy of precious metals. In his own opinion, Populvuh's existence rendered unnecessary that of the sun and the moon, and this egoism so disgusted the gods that they resolved upon his overthrow. His 2 sons, Sipachna and Cabrakan, Earth-heaper and Earthquake, were daily employed, the one in heaping up mountains, and the other in demolishing them, and these also incurred the wrath of the immortals. Shortly after the decision of the deities, the twin hero gods Hun-Apu and Zbanke came to earth with the intention of chastising the arrogance of Populvuh and his progeny. Now, Populvuh had a great tree of the variety known in Central America as nans or tapal, bearing a fruit round, yellow, and aromatic, and upon this fruit he depended for his daily sustenance. One day, on going to partake of it for his morning meal, he mounted to its summit in order to espy the choicest fruits, when, to his great indignation, he discovered that Hunahpu and Xbalanque had been before him, and had almost denuded the tree of its produce. The hero gods, who lay concealed within the foliage, now added injury to theft by hurling at Vukukeikix a dart from the blowpipe, which had the effect of precipitating him from the summit of the tree to the earth. He arose in great wrath, bleeding profusely from a severe wound in the jaw. Hunahpu then threw himself upon Vukukeikix, who in terrible anger seized the god by the arm and wrenched it from the body. He then proceeded to his dwelling, where he was met and anxiously interrogated by his spouse Chimalmat. Tortured by the pain in his teeth and jaw, he, in an access of spite, hung Hunahpu's arm above a blazing fire, and then threw himself down to bemoan his injuries, consoling himself, however, with the idea that he had adequately avenged himself upon the interlopers who had dared to disturb his peace. But Hunahpu and Xbalanque were in no mind that he should escape so easily, and the recovery of Hunahpu's arm must be made at all hazards. With this end in view, they consulted two venerable beings in whom we readily recognize the father-mother divinities, Xpayacoc and Smukain, disguised for the nonce as sorcerers. These personages accompanied Hunahpu and Xbalanque to the abode of Vukukeikix, whom they found in a state of intense agony. The ancients persuaded him to be operated upon in order to relieve his sufferings, and for his glittering teeth they substituted grains of maize. Next they removed his eyes of emerald, upon which his death speedily followed, as did that of his wife Chimalmat. Hunahpu's arm was recovered, reaffixed to his shoulder, and all ended satisfactorily for the hero gods. But their mission was not yet complete. The sons of Vukukeikix, Zipacna and Cabrakan, remained to be accounted for. Zipacna consented, at the entreaty of 400 youths, incited by the hero gods, to assist them in transporting a huge tree which was destined for the roof tree of a house they were building. Whilst assisting them, he was beguiled by them into entering a great ditch which they had dug for the purpose of destroying him, and when once he descended was overwhelmed by tree trunks by his treacherous acquaintances, who imagined him to be slain. But he took refuge in a side tunnel of the excavation, cut off his hair and nails for the ants to carry up to his enemies as a sign of his death, waited until the youths had become intoxicated with pulque because of joy at his supposed demise, and then, emerging from the pit, shook the house that the youths had built over his body about their heads, so that all were destroyed in its ruins. But Hunahpu and Xbalanque were grieved that the 400 had perished, and laid a more efficacious trap for Zipacna. The mountain-bearer, carrying the mountains by night, sought his sustenance by day by the shore of the river, where he lived upon fish and crabs. The hero gods constructed an artificial crab, which they placed in a cavern at the bottom of a deep ravine. The hungry Titan descended to the cave, which he entered on all fours. But a neighboring mountain had been undermined by the divine brothers, and its bulk was cast upon him. Thus, at the foot of the Mount Maven perished the proud mountain maker, whose corpse was turned into stone by the catastrophe. Of the family of boasters, only Cabrakan remained. Discovered by the hero gods at his favorite pastime of overturning the hills, they enticed him in an easterly direction, challenging him to overthrow a particularly high mountain. On the way they shot a bird with their blowpipes and poisoned it with earth. This they gave to Cabrakan to eat. After partaking of the poisoned fare, his strength deserted him, and failing to move the mountain, he was bound and buried by the victorious hero gods. End of the Populvuh, Book 1, by Lewis Spence. Recorded by Lynette Caulkins, Monument, Colorado.